Let's take you now to Pretoria. That's where senior news anchor Thembekile Mkhothotho, as well as senior reporter Canny Maphanga, have been monitoring developments so far at the Madlanga Commission. Thembekile, a very good afternoon to you. So we've heard, of course, testimony already from the head of investigations and operations, Matthew Sissoko. Give us a sense in terms of so far, what has his testimony been able to extrapolate in as far as just how they went about dealing with investigations and how he, Matthews Sissoko, was not very part of some of the investigations his team was meant to undergo?
Unathi, I heard you call me a senior news anchor. I'll take it. So when you are finally investigated, perhaps by a similar commission, it'll be on you. Nonetheless, as you say, we're about to come back from the lunch adjournment here at the Madlanga. We're about to come back from the lunch adjournment here at the Madlanga Commission of Inquiry. Matthew Sissoko, almost at the end, it appears, of his appearance here at the Commission. What was being dealt with, in fact, just before we broke for lunch was about what sort of recommendations he thinks this Commission should make as far as the future of IDAC. How do you ensure that some of, shall we say, the mistakes or deliberate actions that we've seen compromise, especially investigations such as those to do with crime intelligence, are not repeated? So we'll see what he's got to say for himself when he returns now for the final stretch after lunch. Let's bring in then someone who is senior, that's SABC News senior reporter Canny Maphanga. Canny, let's talk about Matthew Sissoko and how he ties into the puzzle, because he's also among the people who've confirmed that Andrea Johnson, as the head of IDAC at the time, did not necessarily do things by the book, at least in the IDAC matters, in the crime intelligence issues rather.
Absolutely. It's about settling that particular issue, that the conduct fell outside of the IDAC manual or the standard operational procedures. And I think in that regard, not only does Mr. Sissoko confirm that these investigations fell outside of this manual, but he also confirms that the manual was approved and signed by both Johnson and Sissoko, and they had distributed it to the IDAC staff as per her instruction, or at least that's what his evidence states before the probe. So effectively, it just bolsters this allegation that the conduct that you saw in terms of the crime intelligence matters was allegedly deliberate, because we do know that at the very least Sissoko, as the head of investigations, has been involved in other matters where they did follow procedure, but it seems that in this matter there was an exception, and it's about getting to the why behind that exception. So all this evidence does is just confirm the very facts that we were seeing so far about IDAC and its investigations, but I do think there are questions for him to answer in terms of his role, because if you're the head of investigations, at the very least you should have known about these Section 27 referrals. You couldn't have been left in the dark. And now the problem is it in the structure itself? Is it in the individuals? He needs to assist the Commission in, I guess, getting to a point where they can develop reforms that could avoid this possible situation. But the very manual that he testifies about that was approved actually guards against this kind of conduct. It's just all that it shows you is that allegedly there was a deliberate intention not to follow these prescripts to reach a particular end. And this evidence, all that it does, it bolsters that discovery before the probe.
And Matthew Sissoko is already back in his seat here in the witness box at the Madlanga Commission, so a sign that we're about to begin imminently. I think 2:15 is the return time. That leaves about 4 minutes for us to chat then, Canny. So he was also asked why he didn't speak out when he realized that there were flaws or things that were deliberately being done incorrectly. Was that a matter of self-preservation or someone who wasn't empowered by his very employment contract to be able to say, actually, as head of investigations, I cannot be ignored or left out?
I think it's more of the former, not the latter, because he does talk about his history with an iPad and the kind of high-level matters that they dealt with, such as the blue lights, and how that can attract certain kinds of interferences or at least disruptions if you get on the wrong side, let's put it that way. He also leans on the defense that he actually didn't know these matters were being investigated. A lot of the stuff, he learnt about it through the Madlanga Commission. So there's also that difficulty as well. And you do actually see in the WhatsApp exchanges between Advocate Andrea Johnson and Ms. Ramsamy that when they make certain discoveries or they make that allegation against Mr. Rapesu, the first instruction that Johnson gives Ramsamy is do not tell Mr. S. And we know that the Mr. S being referred to there is actually Mr. Sissoko. So there was a lot of things taking place behind closed doors where the persons that you expect to be involved in the investigations were actually not included. They were on the outs. And this is one of those instances where it seems that even though he was the head of investigations, and ideally the now suspended chief IDAC investigator, Mr. Dylan Perimal, should have been reporting to him, it seems that he was on a frolic of his own, allegedly conducting his own operations, which were allegedly spearheaded by Johnson without his knowledge or approval. And he said that he understood it as if he was supposed to be included, he would have been included, and he stayed out of it as he was not included. But that's part of the problem, because as head of investigations, you should have known every single probe that was taking place under your watch. And if it didn't fall within the prescripts of the IDAC manual or in terms of the legislation that you're guided by, in terms of what falls in your mandate, then he should have spoken up. He should have made interventions. And that is some of the tough questions that he's likely to face, because it seems, although we thought his testimony was over before the lunch adjournment, that the Commission may have other questions that they need to pose to him, because it's a leadership failure in that regard, because we do know that the two subordinates, Rapesu and Ramsamy, had CC'd him in several email correspondence flagging the alleged unlawful conduct that was following the matters into crime intelligence, and he admits on the stand that he didn't do anything. And that's part of the problem in dealing with the evidence of Sissoko.
And Canny and I are going to step out slightly out of shot, or Gwazi, who's working the camera, will show you the spokesperson for the Commission now in the room. Jeremy Michaels preparing the seats for the commissioners. A sign, as always, that we're about to begin. He's got the mic in his hand now, in fact, about to make that announcement just before the chairperson, Madlanga, and co-commissioners Baloyi and Khumalo walk back into the room. But perhaps in the minute that we have, Canny, let's talk about Sissoko's history with Mr. Nkabinde, who was in the Minister Senzo Mkhunu's office, and how that became part of the issue.
Well, this is part of the warning that he gave Ramsamy, that I think it was that he was saying that Nkabinde was not a trustworthy person, if I remember correctly the terms that were used, and he refers it back to their time at IPID and the investigations into the blue light saga there and the kind of conduct that allegedly followed Nkabinde there. So it's a lot of discoveries coming out, and it's part of that history that he decided he probably is going to stay back and not get involved in this matter.
And now we resume.